listening to Inspire Instructor Podcast, where the learning never stops. Welcome, you wonderful people, and thank you for listening to Inspire Instructor Training Podcast. You might have noticed that we've had a brand change, and I have joined forces with the wonderful Diana Todd and Decalion McGregor Sims. We have set up a training company, and we are going to be providing courses and a membership and workshops and lots of other wonderful things coming in the future. For now, I'm just going to ask you to head over to Inspire Instructor Training on Facebook and like our Facebook page so you can get all the information of everything we are planning for in the future. But we're planning to launch in January with a couple of products to help you guys become the best instructors that you can be. On to today's episode though. So today we have Ray Seagrave. Ray is amazing. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and we discuss all things coaching and how Ray got into the industry, and how he's used his background to help him within the industry. We discuss risk management, and also we move on to our conversation about the national standards, which was also actually about risk as well. And then if you listen to the end, you can hear Ray's amazing top tip. So without further ado, on to the episode. Welcome, Ray Seagrave, to the podcast. Ray is someone who I have watched a few times at expos and webinars and things like this, and always been very impressed with the content that you put out. So super happy to have you on the podcast. So yeah, welcome, Ray.
It's nice being here. Thank you, Phil. Yeah, it's fantastic. Looking forward to it. Brilliant.
So having said that, I've seen a few of your content on the podcast, on webinars and things. I don't necessarily know too much about your background. I think I maybe have heard you talk about it briefly on occasions, but yeah, I'd be intrigued to sort of know how you got into the industry to start with. Yeah, so how did you get into the industry?
Well, I came from a completely different industry, as most people do when they become a driving instructor, and that's what I think brings loads of variety to the industry. You know, we're all different sides of the universe, and all different skills, and we all bring those to bear in helping pupils achieve goals. But I came from management side. I was a marketing director for many years, and I worked in the clothing industry. I also worked in fashion retail, and I worked in the paper industry. So, and I was in marketing for quite some time, and I really enjoyed that. But then there came a period in my life where I thought, wow, my kids were growing up. I'd like to see more of them. And if I was going to go more into business, I knew that was going to take much more of my time. And so my wife and I at the time decided, what could we do that would be that would help pay the bills, but also would help give me plenty of time to see my kids growing up. So we decided to foster, and we went into fostering, and that gave me an opportunity to spend more time with kids, and also some additional kids, and we're moving them onto new parents, and that was quite an interesting part of my life. But that really then gave me an opportunity to step away from the real manic side of business into the driver training industry. I always wanted to become a trainer when I first came in, but and it wasn't an easy road for me. I think I started to learn about the business when you're in the business, but I came with a passion, and I think when my kids were growing up, I said to them, follow your passion and you'll enjoy what you do. And I came with a passion really to help others be successful. And I suppose that came from my business management side, but really helping people to become the best that they could be. And that was my passion, to try and be the best that I could be. So when I joined the industry, I felt really the weight of that responsibility on my shoulders. If there was anything that I said or anything that I did while I was training someone, I wanted to make sure that that was correct, because I would have hated it if their names appeared in the local papers because they've been in some incident on the road. That would have really been a thing that I couldn't live with myself with. So I wanted to try and, if I was going to teach this on, I wanted to really understand what it was about, and really get to know the business, the industry, so I could then stand proud and go, right, okay, this is I know what I'm talking about now. I know what I'm doing. I've got some time behind me, and I really want to now train others to be the best that they can be, so they can pass that message on when they're helping pupils. What effectively is a massive life skill that could be, if it's done correctly, and they become safe on the road, and it's also about their families as well. So I came with a passion for making sure that road safety and making sure that everyone was going to be okay. So when I joined, unfortunately, I think I worked hard at it. I didn't know I had a mortgage to pay, so I thought, well, I've got to make this work. There's that pressure as well. But I also decided to take the leap of faith right into it. And I'm the sort of person that whenever I commit myself to something, it's 110%. It's all in, because I want to try and make the best of it. So I started the industry, and I quite quickly learned at the time. This. I don't know if you were around then, Phil, but this is the old Part 3 qualification system, which was different to what we have now, which is the standards check qualification system. But the old Part 3 was a series of preset tests, and the examiner role played. And quite soon after that, when I passed my when I passed my Part 3, I realised that actually I'd been taught to pass a test, and I wasn't really been taught the skills I needed to be a really, really great driver instructor. And that's a theme that I carried with me, that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't teaching pupils to pass a driving test either. I wanted to make sure that they were the best driver that they could be. And I knew that if I did that, not only would they pass a driving test, but ultimately the goal was that they were going to be safe on the road. And I knew that they were more likely to be that if I could help them understand how what they did and their attitude towards driving and their beliefs and their behaviors would then ultimately result in them doing well or having problems. So I joined understanding that actually I needed a bit of work to do now. I've passed a Part 3 qualification, but really there was huge gaps, and I sort of recognised that because from my past experience, I did a lot of coaching, and managing staff and coaching staff to be the best that they can be and helping them achieve goals was part of my work ethic. It was part of me as a person. I'd also at that time taken some qualifications in life coaching. So coaching was in my blood. And when I came into the industry, the industry was just about to change. The Hermes report came out. There was some European stuff going on. And the national and driver rider standards as they are now were just about to be rewritten to what they are now. So all that change was happening in the industry. And that's when client-centered learning started to first appear. And I really was getting enthusiastic about that because it was changing. Because when I first qualified, I thought, well, is this it? Should I really be training in this way? It's very prescriptive. It's not really helping pupils learn. It's really doing things in a more instructor-centric way, rather than a client-centered approach. And to a degree, I was very frustrated with that. In fact, what happened was I pretty much went, okay, I've qualified. Now let's see how I can help my people best learn. And then I went on to really get into grips with the changes that are happening in the industry. Being the forefront of that was important, and aligning myself with the right people in the industry, that was also important. Those that were forward thinking, those trainers that could see what was happening on the horizon. So I invested heavily in my own personal development. I wanted to make sure that was keeping up with changes in the industry. So then when I did move on to be a trainer, I was again doing the right thing. So I approached it with a lot of passion, and 100% to do the right thing at the right time and be in the right place at the right time. So I could then stand high and go, okay, so now when I'm training this on, I can make sure that the people that I'm training, they are they're approaching it in a similar sort of way, that they've got a passion for passing on that safety conscious and safety aspect to road safety.
I love all of that. I love how you came into the industry with this sort of kind of passion. I think for me, I was quite young when I started, so I think I just came in to be a driving instructor and gradually grew the same sort of passions and took a bit longer to get to to get to that sort of kind of want and need to do that. But I love how you just kind of came in going, I'm gonna change the world and make people safer on the roads. Just want to go back to a couple of things you said, because you said early on about how everyone kind of comes in with these different sets of knowledge and information into this industry. And I think particularly this industry, maybe more so than many others, we just get this like elected sort of like people from everywhere, all over, with loads of different sort of backgrounds. And you mentioned about marketing, and so I'm intrigued to see it. Like, has that helped you with not so much maybe a little bit of the training side, but also just like for putting yourself out there? Because I think that's something we don't get trained on as instructors. You can go and search for that, but I don't think it's necessarily there in a lot of the courses. Mm-hmm. And I'm also intrigued. I'll just let you talk about that first, actually, before I move on.
Well, it's happened in a number of ways, actually. I mean, I'm quite heavily into psychology. And when you think about the psychology behind marketing and sales, there's quite a lot of psychology there in terms of, why might a person do one thing instead of doing another? So out of that came a real depth of knowledge and understanding of the psychology behind things. And you know as well as I, there's a lot of psychology in driving. There's a lot of psychology in helping someone and understanding them and their approach. So so that's a big part of it. But also, having a professional attitude and a professional approach to things. Right from the early stages when I became a driving instructor, I thought, well, if I'm going to stand out from everyone else, I've got to make sure that I'm training to the best of my ability, that what I am training is correct, but also that I'm acting in a professional way. I've signed up to a code of conduct, and that's all marketing, isn't it? It's all about how you present yourself, and those trainers that do that best, they do stand out, and you do see them, and the way they act, the way they present themselves, the structure of their lessons, and pupils come to, and that can be part of your overall package, can't it, in terms of what pupils are effectively, look at sales and marketing, what pupils are buying from you. Well, what pupils are buying from you really is, for them, is an end result, but what they come to realize is that they're getting from you something they hadn't realized, which is a fantastic life skill that's going to keep them safe. That they tend to come to you wanting to pass a driving test, but actually they leave with a different approach, with a different attitude and a different understanding that isn't about a driving test at the end of the day. So the marketing aspect really is about how we as instructors present ourselves in a professional manner, in a professional way, but also the psychology around why people do things is a big part of marketing, and understanding, behaviors and aspects of behaviors and intentions and our thoughts and our beliefs and our belief systems. They're all part of, really, when we delve into it, why a driver might do one thing as opposed to another. So the psychology behind it is a massive thing for me.
Yeah, I think as soon as you said that, I thought actually part of what we do is we sell road safety to teenagers, and so there is an element of that the psychology of changing their behaviors and beliefs and their it's not too dissimilar to selling a product. You're selling them on the idea of being safe drivers. You said about acting professional, and actually this is something I noticed straight away with you, actually. So I think, just from to your credit, it's when I first saw you at an expo, you stood out for that as like, obviously there were some great talkers and trainers there, but you came across as professional. So I think it does. You're right; it stands out. And if you want to put yourself out there as that person, then it does stand out and it does work, because I think that instantly, before I knew who you were, I
Mm.
was like, oh, this person's like, even I think even before you spoke, I was like, this person knows what they're talking about because of the way you've presented yourself. So yeah, for anyone out there listening, sort of that is asking themselves that, maybe not for talking on stage, but even just in the car,
Mm.
it does make a difference how you turn up to a lesson, how you look, and how you present yourselves, and maybe not as much to the pupil, but maybe to the parents when they
Mm.
get out of the car, and how you act in that situation.
Yeah, it's quality of service, isn't it?
Mm.
And it's all part of that, really, I think.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit and about you the fostering actually as well. So you said
Mhm.
about that, and I'm just intrigued whether that experience in your life then helped you, like, with teaching learners and sort of helping. I don't know this, what, like, who you were fostering, or what ages and stuff, but whether that experience helped you, again, it's all that life experience coming into the industry.
Mm. Well, I came from a family background which was very stable, and open relationships, and we talk amongst themselves quite a lot, and we'd help and support each other in that respect. But when I moved into fostering, if I didn't know before, I quite quickly recognized that actually not all family relationships were like that, and there were different types of relationship, and having the training to do that really helped me understand a lot about how youngsters went through the care system, but also how relationships and how good, strong relationships help nurture and foster a responsible attitude that would then serve them well after they left the family home, for example. So we've got like solid parenting and boundaries, and morals and judgments. They all come out when you've got a 17-year-old learning to drive, and it's helping when we're in the car. It's helping pupils, we're going to talk about risk in a minute, but it's helping pupils understand what things that we do can attract low risk, and what things that we do can attract high risk, and what the consequences around those things are. But we all know that there are rules and laws, and whether we follow those rules and laws in society depends on a few things. Whether we, first of all, we believe in those rules and laws. I mean, quite recently there was a change in law in Wales, where they reduced the speed limits down to 20 miles an hour, and the backlash from that. So there's a lot of drivers think, well, actually, I don't believe that it should be 20 miles an hour. So, and it's those belief systems that are there that would then determine whether they do actually travel at 20 miles an hour or not, depending on who's looking. So that fostering element really just added to my understanding of how relationships are important in the car, and not to judge, that having a complete non-judgmental approach about this person next to you. They come to the conclusions that they come to based on what their current life has been like so far, and the decisions they've made so far based on their current level of knowledge and understanding about the world. And we're there to help present a different aspect to things in a lot of respects. And we are then presenting them with consequences and arguments that perhaps no one's talked to them about that before, that they hadn't realized that was the case before. And in that respect, then we're helping develop a safe driving attitude and belief. So understanding that people can come from different backgrounds. They can come from sometimes very non-supportive, non-nurturing backgrounds, and the fact to maybe find their own way in life. And the closest people that they might listen to might be their friends, might not be someone back home. And then we talk about, in driver training, we talk about the GDE matrix, and the high levels where our pupils are surrounded by the peer group and society, and those influences on their behaviors. So when you look at, I think that what fostering gave me, it just gave me a deeper understanding of how everyone is different, and as a trainer, if we approach that in almost like a thought neutral or a non-judgmental way, and I know sometimes we talk about learning styles. And we're tapping into lots of different things here, but we talk about learning styles and auditory and visual and kinesthetic. And actually, I like to completely turn that on its head and go, do you know what? It's about that person next to you. What is it that's unique about them? What is it that's unique about their background, their upbringing, their thoughts, their beliefs, their attitudes, how they learn, how best they learn, what their learning experience has been like so far? Has that been good? Has it been bad? What's been good about it? What's been bad? It's about them as that person, and finding out about them. Then does, and we're not talking about this particular competence today, but then really helps us as a trainer to adapt what we do to help our people best learn. And a big part of that is the relationship we have in the car. So we can develop that open relationship, the understanding there. We get to know about our pupil and we find out what works for them. So we can then tailor what we do to help that person best learn. And a lot of that is about relationships. A lot of that is about this two-way flow of communication that comes from rapport and trust. And you can only get trust when and I've got a flow of two-way communication that really helps you understand that pupil, and they'll answer your questions, and they'll be more prepared to answer those questions when they trust you. And I think knowing about relationships and how to have really good open communication is a big part of a skill, one of the 5 coaching skills, but certainly a big part of the skills that I'm helping PDIs and ADIs develop to help them with their business.
Yeah, it's actually my favorite part of lessons is getting to know the pupils and finding out their and I loved how you described it as it's like it's the individual that person, and we can talk, like you said, you can talk about learning styles, but I don't necessarily like putting those sort of kind of labels on it, because I think you find somebody, one is maybe a bit of both, or actually they might like to learn one thing one way and then another thing another way. I find the same, and actually I spoke to Chris Benstead in the last episode a little bit about this. I find the same with special educational needs, that you can put a label on it. So this person is autistic or this person has ADHD. And again, it's not, it's this person is an individual, and their autism or ADHD will manifest in whatever way because of their experiences. And so again, it's about going what works for them, and finding that out. And so yeah, it's the favorite part of my lessons, because it's the bit that's always different. Because like the roads and stuff, you know those inside out, but this is the bit you get to learn. So yeah.
I mean, this is the danger of labeling people. You put the labels to one side. It isn't about a label. It isn't about whether they're this or whether they're that. About how can I help you? How can I help? What do you like? What do you like? What is it about what I'm doing at the moment that's helping you? What's not helping you? How can I change up what I do? And then that makes you then better able to adapt to your pupils' needs. And part of that is being open to understand a little bit about you and a little bit about, where your strengths are and where you're maybe not so strong, and those areas where you find yourself getting triggered on some things, and when you may sit back and go, hang on a minute, I perhaps need to be a bit more patient here. So a lot about where you work on your adaptability means that you become a better trainer, because you are searching for the answer to the question, how can I best help you, without there being any sort of label at all.
Yeah. So I just wanted to move on a little bit to where, so you said you came into the industry and you had all these sort of kind of ideas of wanting to be, you wanted to be an instructor trainer. So how did you go about that? Did you start off a solo? Were you part of a franchise, or?
Well, when I first joined the industry, I was part of a franchise. I thought the way I best learn is very practical. So I wanted to, I got this theory. I wanted to put the theory into practice. So I went on a PDI license, and that really helped me, because it gave me an opportunity to practice those skills. But then I set out on this thirst and quest for knowledge, like a big journey. because I went into fleet. I wanted, and that's where I was better able to put at that time, some of the coaching skills more into lessons, or into sessions with when I was doing fleet training. As well as that, I looked at technically my own technical skills. So I did things like IAM and ROSPA, advanced driving, because I wanted to make sure that I taught on the best practice. So I wanted to, it was a thirst for knowledge. I wanted to try and be the best I could be as a driver, the best I could be as a trainer, because I knew that I needed to get fully competent in what I was doing, so that I can then launch myself into instructor training. The route for me was through audit. I went. I thought, well, what's the best way of doing this? Obviously, I went through some CPD myself, some continuous personal development, which I always did. I mean, I remember, the first year of my training thinking, okay, I need to put some time aside for me. I need to put some time aside for my development. And where can I best go for that? So, how could I really develop my skills so I could, but also commit to that? Because I think it's, with all good intention, you can say, yeah, I'll do something this year, but unless you commit to that, sometimes it never gets done. And it's one of the things I would say to those listening now, that, put some time aside in your diary for you, invest in yourself, because that's one of the best things you can do as a trainer. But I wanted to make sure that I practiced this enough to give me the confidence to then move on. So I spent a few years building a business, making sure that my business as a driving school was strong. That I was making sure that I was learning while I was doing that. It was quite successful. I was an independent for a long time, and then I decided to grow a school. And as I did that, I was taking on PDIs and ADIs. But then I recognized that actually I didn't want to become a manager of a driving school. When I did my MBA, one of my thesis was about how entrepreneurial managers grow and develop businesses, but how they have to change, and the skill sets they have to develop, and sometimes that takes them away from the things they enjoy, and so they have to learn about how to adapt. If that's what they want. So I quite early, I decided I didn't want to grow a big school. I probably could, but then that would mean I would need to turn me into a manager of a school rather than a trainer. And the passion was around the training. So I wanted to make sure that I could focus on the training. So I decided to grow my school based on ADIs becoming independent, and going down their own path of independence, and growing their own school and helping them grow and develop their business. So then I then moved into audit training, more earlier. So let's go back about 4 or 5 years when just before COVID kicked off. Prior to that, I was doing some classroom sessions, but then COVID hit, and all of a sudden, what were we going to do? We're all at home, and then Zoom appeared. And that allowed then for my business to continue to keep reaching out to ADIs that wanted support, certainly through the COVID times, but also additional training. There were still, things happening at that time. So I had to upskill and learn all this new technology, surrounded by 3 screens at the moment. And I've got a studio with me. So we've got technical abilities to be able to change what we do. And that's all part of changing as a trainer as well, in terms of new technologies and what's happening in the industry, and pushing that forward. But I then was doing classroom sessions. Then COVID hit. They had to stop. I was also doing one-to-one sessions in car. Then COVID hit. And as well as that, I started to become more nationally known by attending the national conferences. I started to run my own courses, online courses, in classroom courses, travel the country, and also teaching ADI associations. So I was down in Cambridge a couple of weeks ago when there was about 30 in there, 34 in there, which is quite a nice sizable classroom session. We had a great day. So I've been doing those things for a number of years now, but on the back of also becoming an audit trainer. Because I mean, I know there's some trainers out there that aren't audit trainers and they are particularly good trainers, but I think that when you align yourself with the 17 competences of the national standards, they go right through from audit right through to ADR, right through to Part 3, right through the whole system. So so I decided to become an audit trainer, and that's where I've been. So and enjoying every single day of it.
Brilliant. Yes. So you've mentioned obviously the national standards there and the Part 3 and how it all sort of runs all the way through. So let's use that, and we'll move on to having our conversation about our competency for this week. So this week's competency was or is: did the trainer ensure the pupil fully understood how the responsibility for risk would be shared?
Yeah.
So Ray, I was over to you. Teach me about this.
Well, I think where some trainers make a mistake is that they think they just do it at just a singular place. You know, the beginning of a lesson. You know, or you're responsible for making sure the car is driven safely, and I'm going to jump in if I need to. And there's that responsibility statement that some trainers get hung up on a little bit. But it's actually the thread that goes right through the lesson. In terms of, and touches on the structure of the lesson. You know, how are your lessons structured in a way that you can help your pupil learn? And part of that is, first of all, deciding what topic that you're going to be working on. That's going to be in line with the syllabus. And then finding out, well, working with that topic, but also breaking that topic down into lesson goals. And I talk a lot about goal setting, and I talk a lot about, because it's, you know, it's one of the best things we can do in a lesson that really keeps pupils on target and achieving something. But when we are helping pupils learn, well, what is it we're going to help them learn? Well, there's a topic where we're helping them learn within, and that topic follows a syllabus. And there are skills that we are using within the National Driver and Rider Standards to do that. But the thing then is, okay, well, how are we going to help them learn? What is it they have to actually learn? And when I was going through my Part 3, it was a bit of a shock for me, because I thought, okay, but Part 1 I understand, that's about theory, isn't it? And the Part 2, yeah, I understand that, that's about driving ability, isn't it? And then Part 3 was like, oh, hang on a minute, now I've got to teach someone. Well, that's completely different. So what did I need to do for that? Well, I had to break that down. Every single thing that I knew about driving, I had to now bring out of my head and almost put down in a logical sequence of events that need to happen in order for something to happen, and break those steps down. And in order that then I could teach someone, you know, how do you teach someone something you just do automatically, was what I was thinking back then. So I had to think, okay, what is it I do automatically? And I didn't really have to think about that for a long time. So when we're goal setting, when we are helping pupils learn, we're helping pupils learn all of those things that we do automatically, and we're bringing all of those out around a particular topic, and we're turning them into pupils' goals, pupils' lesson goals. So when we do that, and there's something specific that the pupil has to learn, develop, achieve, get better at, be more confident with, be less anxious about. These are all very specific things where we are drilling down to what our pupils' needs are. What is it our pupil needs to learn about this particular thing, in order that eventually they can do it on their own with my support. So then this, this particular competence then drills right down to, okay, those individual specific lesson goals, those specific things that people has to learn. And it could be, I don't know, if you teach manual, it could be helping the pupil understand the relationship between the biting point and the gas, and they've got to move their left leg that much. And for those that are listening, I don't know, that's about 5 or 6 millimeters. Yeah. And and realize the movement of their feet. And it could be as specific as that. So when we are working through a lesson, we are sharing tasks. We're breaking those things down into tasks, into lesson goals, into bits people need to learn, and attached to each one of those, there's a risk attached to it. So as well as sharing the task, we're also sharing that part of the overall risk, that for that particular thing. We're also sharing that as well, and the responsibility for who's going to be doing that. But as well as sharing the responsibility for who's going to be doing that and the risks around that, we're helping people's understand what the consequences are around doing or not doing that. So right down at those real specific levels, we're helping pupils begin to understand what the consequences are of certain actions and behaving in a certain way and doing things in a certain way. So we are, and what the result might be. And some people think, well, bring the clutch up too quick, you're going to stall. Okay, well, what does that mean? And what are the risks attached to that? And in what situations might that be low risk, and in what situations might that be extremely high risk? So we are with that particular competence, we're sharing the risks and the tasks throughout the whole lesson, right down to that specific level.
I like that. I like how I love the word task, and I think actually it's something I've started using in my training a little bit more, because we talk about goals and we talk about needs, but I do like this idea that we break those goals and needs down into mini tasks, and I think that helps ADIs and PDIs link this to that, like that idea, like what are our roles for this task within this goal that we're going for. 100% agree that this competency can sometimes have the biggest pitfall is people think that it's done at the start. Like we've set the roles and responsibilities for the whole lesson and we're done. That's something that a lot of PDIs out there need to be aware of. And also, like, reading from a script is the other one that makes me bang my head against the window when I'm sat in the back. Partly because you just see the pupil's eyes glaze over because they've heard it a billion times, and nothing happens in that conversation. Like, make it real, make it a conversation about, like, what you're going to do, what am I going to do, how are we going to get there together, sort of kind of thing. A lot of questions. Go on, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that, Phil, because there are certain things about that statement, and in some cases, I think it's actually quite pertinent to talk about that at the start. There's a few things around that'd be good to just chat about. Only because it's going to be specific to what we're going to talk about later. But in terms of the risk, when I remember when I was having driving lessons, and I was at university, and we had it was during a free period in the summer, and I was busy at uni. I got in the car, I sat in the seat, and I went, "Oh, driving. How does that work again?" And we have this in lessons virtually every single time, don't we? Where people get in the car and the thing, and that's the only time they've thought about what they're going to do or prepare themselves for a lesson. So I think having that little conversation, just to remind them now they're back in the classroom as such, that there's now responsibilities that we're both going to be responsible for. It gets them back into that responsible learning mode, doesn't it? Yes, you can certainly have that in a conversational way, that it doesn't sound repetitive, that it doesn't sound forced, it doesn't sound scripted. It's just a natural conversation. As part of the head check, how they're feeling, how's it going, what's the week been like? Okay, well, we're back into driving now. How much have you prepared? So you start to talk about, okay, well, in a minute we're going to share some tasks, and we're going to share a few things, and you're going to be responsible for that, and I'm responsible for this. How do you feel about that? So, there's but as well as that, if you think about sometimes when you get very nervous or anxious pupils, they sometimes just need to know that you're still going to be there for them, and it's important that. And I've had pupils in the past, looking back, when they've said to me, "Oh, you're not going to let me do this, and you're not going to let me do that, are you?" Of course I'm not. So sometimes pupils need reassurance that you are there, that you're going to help them out if they need the help. And if you do, then obviously you're going to talk about that opportunity, which means it's going to be better next time. So having that conversation can help a pupil get into learning mode, and it can also help a nervous and anxious pupil just to reassure them that everything's going to be all right. It's going to be fine. But because some examiners do. And if I was an examiner, I'd get a little bit, oh gosh, not this again. When you hear a scripted conversation, because an examiner wants to sit in the back of a normal lesson, they'll say that. I know to a degree it's not a normal lesson because it's an assessment, whether that's a part 3 or whether it's a standards check, and it's not. And then to a degree, at the minute, you can't take the type of pupil you could take because there are certain, not restrictions, but there are certain parameters that the DVSA are looking for in a wheels moving lesson. But so I would say, there are some times when just a conversation that would help to reassure the pupil, or to just to confirm, yeah, come on, we're back in learning mode now. Responsibilities, sometimes that helps.
Yeah, I think it always helps. Actually, I think it's great to have, like you said, it sort of sets the scene. It gets them in that mindset. I think it definitely have that. It's one of those things where it's not just that. It's that, and then carry on having that conversation. I actually remember a pupil once that, because I do that obviously regularly, and I remember pulling up at the side of the road, and we discussed that we were going to go off and do something on roundabouts, and the level that we'd set was that she was going to be independent, give it a go, and I had forgotten to say, but if anything happens, I'll jump in and save us. Or I've got your back is what I tend to sort of kind of like to describe it as. So I'm here to help if need be. I forgot. And I think most pupils would just, because I'd said it in the past, assume. But this pupil obviously had felt that they needed me a little bit. And certainly was very conscious of the fact that I did used to say that. And because I didn't say it, I just forgot. She turned and said that. She was like, but you're still going to jump in, yeah? And I was like, yeah, no, we'll still sort of protect you if something goes wrong. But actually, I want you to start thinking of it as like, I'm not here, so that you have that, you're taking that responsibility. And so it is interesting that pupils do need it. They do like that reassurance. And then having said that, though, and I think I remember chatting a few weeks ago about parents and how what sometimes parents can do better than we can do. And I think this is one of those things where almost just because of the nature of the relationship, pupils, or just the nature of the fact we have a pedal in front of us, that the pupils have that little bit of reliance on us. And when they're in the car with the parents, they take more responsibility naturally. And so I do think that's something that we can do in the car with our learners, is try to encourage them to take that same level of responsibility when they're driving with us, once they're at the right level to do that.
Yeah. And this is what we're doing throughout the lesson, because part of that competence is, did the trainer ensure that people fully understood how the responsibility for risk would be shared? But that happens throughout the learning. So when you're dealing with goals, then as the pupil learns, well, then your input into the lesson, so your support will change, won't it? So you might start off by giving them lots of support and by talking them through and helping them learn in that way. But then as your pupil starts to take on board some of those things, some of those tasks, some of those responsibilities for those tasks, you're then sharing them, giving them more to do. It's making sure that throughout that structure is there, that they now understand that, okay, so this time you're going to do that, you're going to be responsible for that, and I'm going to be responsible for this, and that's how you're going to move on a little bit. And then gradually you're taking them through to independence. But there's also beyond independence, which is well, in training speak, we call it unconscious competence, which is muscle memory, isn't it? So we're helping pupils understand that there's a level of responsibility they're now taking on, and the risks attached to that. And we are doing that throughout the whole learning process. So we're helping them understand, okay, so I'm going to back off a little bit. You said you want to give that a go on your own. Fantastic. So you're going to do that bit. I'm going to do that. Or it may be, okay, so you're going to do that on your own now. That's brilliant. Crack on. I'll just watch you. Jump in if I need to. So that sharing of tasks and risks and responsibilities happens throughout the whole learning process, throughout the whole lesson.
Yeah. And I think just that bit you sort of mentioned there about go and have a go on your own, like crack on, show me what you got, sort of kind of for a pupil. And I think it's really important that we do that, because there's something that I see a lot when sat in the back of lessons, that instructors almost just try to fade into the background, like slowly and subtly, and so the pupil is getting better at the roundabouts, and the instructors may be there in their head going, they're getting this is good, I'm going to shut up at the next one. But it's really important that we verbalize that, because otherwise the pupil is waiting for that prompt, and you're not suddenly saying, yeah, let's go, or yeah, let's slow down, and they're not doing it, and you're thinking, oh, they were doing it last time. I was like, yeah, because you prompted them. It's very important that you pass that responsibility over to the people, so that they know what their role is in this, and it's a great way as well of helping them realize they're making progress, because sometimes progress is getting better at something, but sometimes this progress is shutting your driving instructor up, and realizing that the less they're talking, the more the more progress and the more responsibility, and that might be their win for the end of the session, is that I managed to do this roundabout and you didn't say anything. I've still got work to do on this roundabout, but you didn't say anything and we were okay. That might be their win.
And that's where you are the structure taking place, because your pupils rely on that structure, and and if there's any ambiguity there, they're not sure. Am I doing this now, or did my instructor said they were going to prompt me there, but they never did. What does that mean? That way they can easily track, like you say, their progress. But the wider implication on that is that you are helping pupils manage their expectations. So as your pupil becomes aware of what their current abilities are, then you're then better able to manage their expectations all the way through the learning process. So they're less likely then to come to you and say, oh, can I book my driving test, when they are nowhere near ready, because they wouldn't be doing that if they had an understanding of where they were now, what was left to achieve, and how long it might take them to do that. So you are right down at that very, very lower level, helping them understand how their learning is going, how you're supporting them, and there's that structure there. So there's they know at any one time and that structure is based on them helping them achieve goals. Because, and going back, and we're not talking so much about lesson planning today, but your lessons are going to be structured around helping your pupil achieve goals, which means that your route's going to help them do that. You're going to change up the route when you need to. And that's all about sharing tasks and responsibilities. When your pupil's now got it, you're there thinking, okay, well, how can I help them learn now? And what tends to happen is you have a conversation where you go, right, okay, I can see you've got that now. Can I make a suggestion? Let's take it around the corner, where those corners are just a little bit more complex, and there's something else for you to learn. So you're moving it on a little bit. Again, you are helping your pupil recognize that learning's taking place. They're now moving on. They're doing it at independence, and now they're ready for something more challenging. So this is where the competences touch on each other. They're not just independent of each other. They actually, like a spider's web, interconnect with each other, which is why one thing can affect another thing. So when you go for an assessment, we're not talking about assessment much, but when you go for an assessment, if you fall down in one area, you're more than likely going to be falling down in a few others as well. So right down at that, sharing risk, tasks, and responsibilities, that happens throughout the whole process as you're helping your pupil learn. Then you back off a little bit, you give them a go. They do it on their own. You then give them enough practice so they're doing it competently, to a point where you're then going to move them on a little bit, make it a bit more complex. You might then have to give them a bit more support, but there's progress happening all the time. And that's when you can look back at the end of a lesson, after you've shared all those tasks and all those responsibilities and given them some more, that then you can have, and then debrief, you can then go, right, talk to me about today. What have you learned? And that will all come out because there's been clear understanding, there's been a clear separation between what you've done for them, what they've done themselves, and how they've grown, how they've developed, what they've learned to do themselves all the way through the lesson.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, it's one of the ways I can tell we've had a good lesson is when a pupil can answer that question really easily because they've seen that. Just want to ask a question because it's one thing that I get asked quite a lot on this topic is the question, what help would you like from me, or what support would you like from me when we've set that task? And then a pupil says, I want to have a go on my own, but actually it's the first time we're doing it. And in fact, I was sat in the back of a lesson not too long ago where this happened. And we were going off to do dual carriageways for the first time. And the instructor said, how much help would you like from me on the dual carriageway? And the pupil said, I would like to have a go on my own. And we've never, ever done a slip road, never joined a slip road. And I'm sat in the back thinking, please don't. And so what do you sort of kind of suggest around that, having that conversation?
First of all, isn't it great? Isn't it great that a pupil wants to challenge themselves like that? And I'm a great believer in encouraging that, because if you are encouraging them to take responsibility in this way, you're encouraging them to be brave sometimes. I've always said outside your comfort zone is where the magic happens, and that's where the learning takes place. Yeah. Having said that, we've also got to manage the risks, haven't we, in the car? So that's about helping the pupil understand, because it's a fantastic goal. That is, that's a great objective. It's something nice that you want to achieve that, and it's asking questions around. Okay, so what skills would you need to have or develop or be competent at in order for you to attempt that? And then it's having that conversation with the pupil to help raise their understanding and awareness, which is words that are used quite often, to get an understanding of what's required, where they are now. Have they got those sorts of skills? Break those skills down in order then you can have a conversation. Right, okay. So to achieve that bigger goal of doing a dual carriageway, or even entering a dual carriageway, these are the things that then you would need to understand, develop, learn, get good at on the way to achieving that. Let's go and have a go at them.
Yeah.
So you're helping your pupil understand where their level is, and then working towards that goal. You're helping them bring out those things, those skills they'd need to do in order to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually this, to be fair to the instructor, that in that scenario, that is exactly what they did. Actually, they didn't dismiss the fact that the pupil wanted to have a go on their own. They talked about what they could do on their own, which was great. And so, for example, the approach to a dual carriageway is just MSPSL, so they already knew that. So there was elements of that, but when it came to things like choosing speed, maybe making the decision, and stuff like that, then the instructor said it would make sense that if I offered some support. And the goal then actually became, again, sort of kind of, let's get to the point where you can have a go on your own. And so absolutely, I 100% agree.
It's got to be within the pupil's current level of ability, maybe with your support. Yeah, you shouldn't overwhelm them, and completely outside of their ability. Have you noticed I'm using language around the competences here? That's deliberate. Yeah, because it is about, connecting the dots here. In real life, you're saying to yourself, okay, well, can my pupil do this? Where's my pupil's capabilities? What do I have to help them understand, so they can come to the conclusion that actually I'm not ready to do that yet. I need to focus on this first, and then that's engaging them in the learning, isn't it? It's helping them manage their expectations, but also keeping them motivated, in a way that's a fantastic, it's a nice goal to achieve. What is it we could work on today that would help you get there? Then it's having those conversations in that way.
So
Because you're managing the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that brings me on to my final question, which I get asked quite a lot, is what do I do? So this is a PDI asking. So what would I do if I have said to a pupil, you're responsible for, you can go do this on your own, and then it starts to go wrong? And I think PDIs particularly sort of kind of struggle with this concept of but I've said they can do it on their own. And
Hmm.
then do I shut up and let it go wrong, or do I jump in and prevent the mistake? What would you say?
Yeah, well, this is when you're working inside or outside the goal. If you're working inside the goal, if it's something that you've shared the risks and tasks and responsibilities for, then you are going to jump in if it's safety critical, aren't you? So you are. It's a bit like Phil. I don't know, Phil. Phil, can you ride a bike?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember how you learned how to ride a bike?
Yeah, probably my dad holding on to the back of it, pushing me along.
Yeah, and then you built your confidence up, and you had to learn something that your brain was telling you not to do, which was speed up. You had to learn how to speed up because then you got your balance, didn't you? Um, but you said Dad was there, and Dad was there ready to grab the saddle or grab you to stop you from falling. Yeah, well, that's exactly what we are doing in the car. We are we are helping our pupils learn within safety critical parameters. They might wobble a little bit, yeah, but providing it's not risk critical, we're going to let them have a go. That's called experiential learning. We're letting them learn by doing it so they can work out, oh, that was a little bit too much gas, or that was a little bit harsh on the brake. And we're helping them understand what the risks and consequences are to that so they can then try it again in a different way, maybe with our support. So it's understanding that if the pupil has said, "Can I give it a go?" that yes, of course they can. If there's anything risk critical, you're still going to need to step in um, because you're not going to let them fall. You're going to be there to grab the saddle, but they might not get it 100% right, but that's okay because they're learning from that experience, and they know that you are there to not let them do something that's risk critical, that you will step in. So it's that boundary between letting them have a go at it, them not quite getting it 100%, but at least they're learning from the experience, not stepping in too early, but stepping in if you need to.
Yeah, and I fully relate to that analogy as well because I recently taught my daughter to ride a bike,
Yeah.
and the instructor in me very much came out in that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So shall we move on to have a chat about the national standards for driver and rider training? So we're going to talk
Yeah.
about Unit 4, which is hugely linked to what we've just talked about. And I think this is, again, making people aware that the 17 competencies come from the national standards for driver and rider training. And so Unit 4, manage risk to the instructor, learner, and third parties. So yeah, again, Ray, do you want to just talk to me about that a little bit, like and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? There's quite a bit here. Um, let's start off with well, communicate intentions to other road users. Are we on that bit? Should we do that bit?
Yeah.
Um, so this is where, if you think about what are the main things that show intent, it's our position, our speed, and our signals, isn't it? And we're helping pupils understand that they're giving off they're giving off body language and intent to other drivers, and we're helping them learn to look for those things in order to that they can make safe decisions. Um, so there's risks around that. One of the questions I asked, this is based on psychology a little bit as well, is that I say to a pupil with things like signaling, you're learning to drive at the moment. Why didn't you ask one of maybe your mum or your dad or one of your friends, what's the biggest problem that you experience with roundabouts? And I say to the pupils, and I've said to the pupils, like, I bet during that conversation, they mentioned people not signaling correctly. And that's an interesting one because if every driver you speak to mentions, oh, yeah, people don't signal properly at roundabouts, um, then why is there a problem? And that's because, well, they aren't doing it either. And that's the psychological aspect of, oh, it's always someone else's fault, isn't it? So we're helping pupils take responsibility here for the fact that they have to give off the right signals in the right time that reduces the risks and consequences. It's all about risks and consequences, isn't it? So giving signals when necessary, that's going to help someone, inform someone, that's going to provide some protection for them. That's important. So that's in there. But again, if you think about, the other side of it, the consequences of not doing it, it's all then the safety elements come out, don't they? Because after all, we're helping people keep safe. It's not that but we're teaching them to do things by rote, off by art, mirror here, signal here, brake here. We're helping them learn how to control a car in the right way that reduces the risk, that then make sure that others around them know what their intent is. So that was that one. Where are we at now? Then the next one we've got is
Before you
sorry.
move on, actually, I
Yeah,
that story about the signals was just triggered a memory that I had with my dad driving the car once. We were
yeah,
approaching a roundabout, following the road ahead, second exit. A car didn't indicate to exit the roundabout, and
hmm
my dad did that. Oh, yeah, I could have gone, sort of kind of thing. Drove into
yeah,
the roundabout and then didn't indicate to exit the roundabout. And I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
but you didn't indicate. And he goes, well, it was obvious where I was going. And I was like,
yeah,
well, to you, maybe, but not to
yeah,
those cars. And it
yeah,
just shows how, like, in the same roundabout, he had that exact
mm,
conversation. It just shows how
yeah,
blind people are to that, the benefit of that signal to other road
yeah.
users.
And it also touches on thoughts, feelings, and beliefs,
Yep.
because and these are the conversations you can have with your pupils. If a driver is saying that that is a problem, people not signaling, why do you think it might be that they don't do it themselves? And then you get into, well, they might have forgot. Well, yeah, they might have forgot. They might not believe that it's necessary because they haven't had a problem yet, the way that they're acting at the moment. And that is a problem, because sometimes drivers can go 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years without there being a problem. But then habitually, something will happen on year 30 plus one day, and they have an accident as a result of them not doing that for 30 years. It's just today there was a consequence. So we're helping our pupils understand there's a connection here between risk and human behavior, and how we can get into a pattern of behavior that reduces our risk. And signaling our intent is you can have a conversation around that. And that's quite a good one, because it helps pupils understand that it's not the action, it's what the action results in, and it's helping them understand in what situations would that be necessary. Next one we've got, to cooperate with other road users, and that's be aware of and predict the likely actions of other road users. This is a real deep well you can go down here, because this is now a situational awareness. And one of the main causes of pupils actually not being successful in a driving test is because they come across something they weren't aware of, but they haven't dealt with before, or something happened, the situation changed, and they didn't know how to deal with it. So that's the depth with which we delve into situational awareness and help our pupils experience situations outside of test routes, or outside of the local area, or in situations that are the most complex at the most difficult time of day. Because then we're helping our pupils develop this understanding of how, and to be able to predict the actions of other drivers based on their body language, know what the rules are, know what they should be doing, and therefore be looking out for what others should be doing in certain situations, read those situations in order to become safer. And this also connects quite nicely to pupils that are nervous and anxious, because one of the problems that can happen there is a lack of confidence, and come from a lack of not being in control. And when you've got a nervous and anxious pupil that doesn't feel in control, they lack the ability or the understanding to be able to look at those things, to be able to predict those situations, to be right about those situations, and then to act on them. So knowing that what they've predicted, that sixth sense, if you like, that driver's sixth sense, has come to fruition, that they've done that they predicted that that car was going to do that, then their confidence has gone up. So helping pupils understand what the and be aware and predict the likely action of other road users is a fundamental part of keeping safe on the road. And that's about giving them time, giving the other drivers and road users enough time when it goes wrong. So if you're aware of your surroundings and you see something's happening here, hang on a minute, I better slow down here, otherwise it's going to make the situation a lot worse. So it's being able to adapt to the right situation in the right way. In the standards, it also talks about emergency vehicles and how to respond to those as well, but also making progress in a steady traffic stream, overtaking consideration for the road users. Interestingly, overtaking is one that sometimes on a country road, it's very difficult to be able to teach. But how many times have we been on a country road when we've had to overtake a slow moving vehicle or a tractor? So using opportunities like that when they appear are golden. I would say jump on those. Try and help your pupil in every situation possible. And it talks about making progress in overtaking traffic. And overtaking is one of the most hazardous and risky things we can do. So let's help our pupils learn how to do it confidently in all situations. Think about 5:30 at night when we're traveling towards a lane roundabout that we've not done before, and all of a sudden it's all gone a little bit wrong and we're in an incorrect lane. Well, what's the safest thing to do here? Well, I'm in an overtaking lane. Well, what do I need to do and how do I need to do it? So this is all this situation analysis that we're helping our pupils understand what the risks and the consequences are to doing certain things in a certain way at a certain time, and whether that's going to be low risk or high risk.
So I think interesting just during your answer there, I realized that we were talking about different national standards, but that's absolutely fine because actually they both massively overlap with risk anyway, and it links with what we were talking about on our competency. So it shows that it's sort of this always runs through the entire sort of kind of spectrum of what the DVSA put out there, and how limiting it can be if we just teach to the driving test, because all of this information is out there for us to be pushing our pupils to way beyond there. And I know, and I spoke to Chris last week about this, Chris Benstead, and he sort of kind of says that the DVSA are about minimum standards, and I agree that to a certain extent because that's what they test. They test the minimum standards, but what they actually put out is content saying this is the maximum standards. This is what we should be aiming for our pupils. And I think there is an element of, again, and maybe actually you've kind of sparked an idea in my head that I need to go through the national. So what you were talking about is national standards for driving cars and light vans, and section 4 of that is all about risk and dealing with other road users. National standards for I've forgotten what it's called now. Instructors, national standards for driver and rider training, and I think instructors need to be aware of both. And I'm sure you are, obviously, Ray, as well. And they both go through, and Unit 4 happens to talk about risk in that situation, but managing risk within a driving lesson rather than managing risk as a driver. One thing on Unit 4 is it talks about making sure your pupil is fit for driving. So it talks about sort of alcohol and drugs. And I just wonder how you would advise ADIs and PDIs to go about that on a lesson. How do you sort of kind of, if you have a pupil, maybe not even necessarily, no, actually, let's go through that. So if a pupil turns up and you're maybe suspicious that there is that they have been using drugs the night before or alcohol the night before, how would you advise that conversation? Because I think that can be quite an awkward situation to be in as a driving instructor.
Well, one that I've been in many times, and I'm sure quite a few have, and PDIs will, if they're not yet experienced this, they may do. But it's an important part of making sure that pupils are fit for a lesson. We're using our intuition to a larger or greater degree, but there's certain things that we can pick up on. Tiredness is one. If we know what our pupils' shift patterns are, and picking the right time for a lesson at the right time, but also things like conversations about what did the night before, alcohol use, drugs, recreational drugs. I've had lessons when I've smelled recreational drugs on a person's clothing. We've had that conversation. It is about understanding that the risks and consequences attached to that. But again, that all these things, there's laws attached to them. It's helping our people understand what they are, and being fit and ready to drive, whether that's being tired or whether that's been under the influence, and what the consequences of those things are. So I think when you've got trust and rapport with your pupil, you can say, look, can I just have a conversation? Can I just have a chat a minute? I've just noticed that there's a smell here. And then you're more able to broach that when you've got good rapport with your pupil. But there's also things you can do in terms of checking pupil dilation and things like that, just to see if they're in. But unless you've got a drug test in the car, or a drink or an alcohol breathalyzer, you can't really tell. But it's having the for sure. But it's certainly having the conversation that. Those things shouldn't be happening, and the lesson will be cancelled if ever you thought that was the case. Because your people needs to understand what the risks and consequences are to themselves and others around that. So I'm sure you've had similar conversations yourself.
I have, yeah. My worst ever one, actually, I didn't notice with a pupil. We were probably about 20 minutes into a lesson, and she actually asked to pull the car over, got out and was sick on the pavement. At which point I realised, you're a bit hungover, aren't you? Because you could smell it at that point. I think she put enough mint and mouthwash in before that to help mask it. And I think that created this. Yeah, again, it was like, I'll drive us home. Let's have a conversation. And I don't know, but maybe that was a good thing to happen for her, because maybe that is now we've able to have that conversation in that moment and make it that we drove home, and hopefully she's now gone out into the world of driving and will think twice about drinking heavily the night before driving. So it did allow me to have that conversation. Something I do now actually is all of my instructors use the Honest Truth app.
Yeah.
And actually this week I had an instructor ask me, saying last week a person turned up smelling of cannabis, and he had said that it was just my friend's smoke, I'm in the flat, and that sort of kind of thing, which is fine. And she said, well, how do I deal with this? And I was like, there's literally a video on the Honest Truth app about drugs. Show them the video and then have a conversation, because like you say, unless you've got a drug test, you can't say whether they were or weren't taking drugs, but you can have a conversation around the safety of it. And you can, because if they're in and around drugs, then maybe it is going to be an issue post-test. So let's try and educate them and try and plant that seed that will maybe grow into a safe decision in the future.
And the standard also talks about making sure you're fit to teach as well. Yeah, so it's not about the pupil, making sure you're fit to teach, and you've taken reasonable steps. But I don't know whether it's education but when I became a driving instructor, I think I didn't drink and drive anyway, but I'd probably have a shandy or something, but that would be it. But then when I became a driving instructor, I had pretty much a zero tolerance to alcohol. So still now, when I'm training the next day, I won't be having a drink the night before. But that's personal choice. Because you recognize again about risks, you're trying to keep the risks as low as possible because there's a job to do in the car. And it's about taking on responsibility. And that's what we're helping our pupils do. And if we're taking on, and we're showing them that we're taking on responsibility to make sure that we're fit to teach and they're fit to drive for the right reasons because of all these consequences, then that's the responsible thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was the same. I think like since becoming a driving instructor, and I think I'm quite fortunate that I came a driving instructor at 21. So I was able to learn these lessons early on in life. And you have a different perspective on it. And yeah, it's not, well, it's obviously it's not worth the risk on the road, but it's also not worth your job. Right. It's so it's just this livelihood and everything in that situation. The
next one on there is 3. Make sure the learner fully understood how you will share with them the responsibility for their safety, your safety, and the safety of other road users. So that's what we've talked about. That consequence. That being responsible for their safety means carrying out doing things in a certain way, and if they do them in a certain way, they either increase the risk or decrease the risk. They've got responsibility while they're driving and doing their bit for your safety and everyone else outside of the car. So that's that bit pretty much we've covered in there. And then you've got give clear and timely instructions, such as when to start, when to turn. I think that's there's two things that can happen there. First of all, if your instructions are late, well, then that's putting additional pressure on the pupil that's already trying to think about what they've got to do. And then you're cramming in that time pressure, and you're giving them a lot more to think about, as well as think about what they've got to do. So giving timely directions is important, but also instructions, something that you've agreed to do, something that you said, okay, I'll prompt you now. Again, if they're late or if they're too early, people might forget what you said, or too late, they've got too much to do in a short space of time. And of course, that can increase the risk in both directions.
Yeah. I think also to note on that part of the national standards is it directly links to the next competency on the part 3 and standards check is were directions and instructions given to pupil clear and in good time. So I think this is again just trying to emphasize to people listening how those competencies come from this document. Basically, they are directly linked. I think even the next one, actually not so much the next one, but later on it talks about watching your pupil. It talks about using client-centered learning to make sure that they are better equipped to deal with such hazards in the future, which links to a later competency. So I'm not necessarily suggesting we go through each one step by step, because I think they are there's here it says continue to scan the environment, assess hazards while observing the learner and providing training inputs. Again, it's all linked across. And so I think this is why it's so important for people to go and read this document and make their own notes. And actually I was talking to someone earlier about this, how this document is a set of standards. It's not training. It's a set of standards, and I think your job is to look at those sentences and those little sections and say, am I doing that? And if not, where can I go and get training so that I am doing that? And ask themselves, am I providing all of this to my learners? And so that's why I think this document is so important, because I think it allows again for you to not be settling for minimum standards. Go have a look at the maximum standards and say, am I covering that? And if not, go to someone like Ray and say, Ray, I can't do this very well. Please help.
Well, also, because you could scale yourself, couldn't you? Yes. So on each one of those, out of 10, you could say, yep, in my lessons now, I get this covered pretty much every single time without even thinking about it. And that's a 10. And the 0 would be, oops, what does that mean? I never do that. And I'll give you an idea of also your performance throughout a lesson in terms of, or all those covered continuously, consistently, because consistency around risk management is one of the biggest risks, isn't it? If you are 100% consistent with what you say, what you do, and how you help your pupil, then that's going to be that's going to impact on safety in quite a big way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ray, before I always forget to remind the guests of this, that I was going to ask you for a top tip for ADIs and PDIs, and what your final sort of kind of top tip will be. And actually, to be honest, I'm starting to enjoy that I don't remind you guys, because I think it comes up with like a off the cuff sort of kind of nice, better answer anyway. But before we do that, and we sort of kind of wrap up, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you and maybe what courses you've got going on at the moment?
Yeah, I'm doing. I'm breaking the. I'm doing a series of masterclasses called Beyond the Standards Check, where I look at In a more deep and meaningful way, we talk about lesson planning and risk management and teaching learning strategies. They're three that I've got going at the moment. But we look right deep into the national standards and also the competences, and we relate those to what everyday lessons should look like, and what it should sound like, what it should feel like. So it just becomes part of what you actually do. So the next time you come for an assessment, that the examiner's seeing actually you. They aren't seeing something that you've tried to just put in place just because there's an assessment coming up. And this is how you teach. This is what you do, because we know when that happens, your training is more consistent and more consistently high, and actually it's less hard work. You are showing an examiner that you're hitting all the 17 different competences, and you're doing it in a consistent way, and I think that's important. So I'm running 3 separate courses on that. You can find me on Facebook. I've got my own Facebook group. There's about almost 3,000 ADIs and PDIs on there now. It's an invitation only. That's called the Driving Instructors Development Toolkit. It's unlike any other Facebook group in as much as that it's very supportive. Well, it's more supportive than some of the others out there. There's a lot of ADIs and PDIs go on there, and they engage in the conversation. They're supportive with the answers. We recognize we're all on a different learning journey. It's a safe learning space, and you can contribute and help others out, and that's a really nice place to be. So you got an invite to come and join me on that. Or you can seek me out on Facebook, Ray Seagrave Instructor Training, where you can see some of my courses I'm doing there. I also visit ADI associations and teach groups of ADIs. So if you're a member of an association, you'd like to get me along, then you can contact me and we can do something together. That'd be good. We can do a workshop, a day's workshop down there. We can focus on something that will help your association improve and develop, and your ADIs within there. So yes, and also I also do one-to-one coaching and mentoring sessions where, as an ongoing preparation for your development and preparing for you to be the best that you can be, then we work together over a period of time. And ADIs, particularly in PDIs, are finding that really useful in terms of really growing, developing their skills, being better at the job every single day, and applying new concepts, new ideas into their training, and of course preparing them for any assessment that they've got coming up. So that's the way of having direct contact with a trainer that's able to support them and help grow their skills and develop them.
Brilliant. I love the sound of this. The courses being beyond the standards check and just how we should be doing it day in, day out, so that the standards check is easy at that point. If it's just what you do, yeah, I really like that. And I can also vouch for your Facebook group, because I'm on there, and I fully agree. It's a very supportive group, and the conversations in that group actually I do find are different to other groups, not just because they're supportive, but I think people ask different types of questions, maybe because of the content you put out there, and there's it's maybe just that next level style stuff, I think. So I know there is different levels on there, but you get some interesting conversations on there, so I can 100% vouch for that as a group.
Yeah, so come and join us on there.
Yeah, definitely. So Ray, yes, what would your top tip, if you had one tip you could give ADIs and PDIs, what would that be?
I would say get to know your pupil, and be prepared to adapt what you do to their level of need, whatever that is. One of the biggest problems I see is when ADIs and PDIs don't do that. Train to your pupil's ability and capability and change it up, and encourage that learning to take place. Keep the learning going. Keep pushing the learning on within your pupil's current ability. That will show value for money. And your pupil, if at the end of a session, at the end of a lesson, you can ask your pupil 3 things. 1, have you had fun? 2, have you learned something new? And 3, do you think you made progress? And if you get answers, 3 yeses to every single one of those, then you're doing well. Keep that going.
Brilliant. I love that. So yeah, thank you very much, Ray, for giving up your time and some great insights. I said before we came on here that I'm really enjoying talking to all these top trainers and how you all describe these things differently. And I think again today, I think there's that your perspective on training is different to others out there, and really resonates with how I sort of kind of think about it. So yeah, thank you very much for taking your time to come and talk to us today.
No problem. Great. Thanks a lot.
Inspire Instructor Podcast, where the learning never stops.